"You have no idea what you just uncovered." The words echoed in my mind as I adjusted the silver tray in my trembling hands, feeling the weight of the necklace against my palm, cold and oddly familiar. The Gala was alive with laughter. The soft clinking of champagne glasses, the strings of a quartet weaving through the air, and I was right in the middle of it, a 24-year-old waitress named Emily Harper, trying to move unseen, balancing trays like a tightrope walker. My black uniform clung slightly with sweat as I maneuvered past women in glittering gowns and men whose watches could pay for a year of my rent. Each step a reminder that I didn't belong here. Not really. Not yet. I caught a glimpse of the towering windows, their reflection doubling the chandelier's sparkle, and the scent of roses mingled with polished marble, a sweet, almost oppressive perfume that seemed to push me toward the edge of the terrace. That was when I noticed the necklace, hanging low on my chest, a delicate silver chain with a small, intricately carved locket. I had borrowed it from the display case backstage, thinking it was just a prop, something that added to the elegance I was supposed to convey. But the instant I felt its cool metal against my skin, a shiver traced my spine, a whisper of memories that didn't belong to me yet felt hauntingly familiar. My heart hammered like the distant timpani in the music as I moved to refill a glass of champagne for a table in the corner, my fingers brushing the crystal, trying to steady my breath. That's when I saw him, Alek Romano, standing near the main entrance, tall and imposing in a tailored black suit that seemed to absorb the golden light around him rather than reflect it. His dark hair was slicked back perfectly, and his eyes, a piercing, icy blue, locked onto mine as if he had been waiting, watching. I froze mid-step, the tray tilting slightly in my hands, and a flute slid, barely making a sound against the marble floor. He didn't flinch, didn't speak, just watched, and somehow, the intensity of his gaze made the room blur around me, the chatter of wealthy patrons fading to a distant hum. My breath hitched, and I forced myself to keep moving, each step deliberate, careful, though my knees threatened to buckle. The necklace felt like a tether, pulling me toward him against every instinct screaming to hide, to melt into the crowd, to disappear. I could hear the low hum of conversation, the clinking of silverware, the soft rustle of gowns, yet it all seemed muted, filtered through the awareness of his presence. A bead of sweat slid down my temple, my hands slick against the polished wood of the tray, and I felt my pulse racing, echoing like a drumline in my ears. Every instinct, every fiber of training I had as a waitress, told me to stay composed, to smile and nod, to serve the champagne without incident. But the weight of that necklace, the memory it seemed to carry, pressed heavily on me, a silent warning. I moved toward the far side of the room, weaving between tables, careful not to meet his eyes. Yet every movement seemed to draw his attention closer, magnetic, undeniable. He began to step forward, each movement precise, controlled, a predator gliding through water, and I felt a mix of fear and an unnameable recognition, a pull that rooted me in place despite my trembling legs. The chandeliers glittered overhead, casting fractured light across his face, highlighting the hard angles of his jaw, the faint scar near his temple, and his expression unreadable, calculating. I gripped the tray tighter, knuckles whitening as I forced myself to take a step, then another, each one measured, deliberate, my mind racing with questions I didn't dare speak aloud. The music swelled, a sudden crescendo that made the room feel alive, pressing down on me, and I realized that everything, every careful choice I'd made tonight, every step I'd taken, had led to this moment, to being seen, to being noticed, and that recognition carried a weight far heavier than I had anticipated. Alek's eyes never left mine, and for the first time in my life, I felt the full force of someone understanding the significance of what I held against my chest, as if the past, present, and an unseen future had converged in that single, electric moment. I swallowed hard. My voice caught somewhere in my throat, unable to form words, the tray shaking slightly, and I knew, without a doubt, that nothing tonight would ever be the same again. My hands were still shaking, and I could feel my heartbeat thundering in my ears as I stepped back from the table, trying to act as if nothing had happened. Yet every fiber of my body remained acutely aware of Alek Romano moving toward me with deliberate precision. The chandeliers above cast shifting reflections across his suit, each step measured, as if he were calculating every movement in the room, his eyes never leaving mine. I took a breath, telling myself I had to focus on the tray in my hands, the routine of serving, the careful motions that had kept me grounded through countless shifts, but it was impossible. His presence filled the space like a tangible force. The chatter of the gala seemed muted now, a low hum in the background, and I could feel the distance between us shrinking with every second. I adjusted the tray once more, the glasses wobbling slightly, my fingers curling around the base to steady them, and I could not stop noticing the way his gaze lingered, piercing, assessing, as though he were seeing through me, into the memories I had tried so hard to bury. I felt a cold pressure at the back of my neck, a subtle tension that urged me to turn, to run, and yet my legs held me in place, rooted torn between instinct and the strange magnetism of someone who seemed both a stranger and someone intimately familiar. Each step I took was careful, deliberate, sliding past guests who laughed and gestured without noticing the storm gathering between us. My mind raced, questions looping endlessly. How could he know so much from a single glance? Why did the necklace matter so profoundly? And what was hidden behind the calm, calculating exterior that radiated authority without a word? I shifted the tray slightly, careful not to let the glasses touch, and in that instant a memory flared. A fragment of a story told long ago. Something whispered by a relative about a woman with the same necklace, about promises made and lost, about a life that had intersected unknowingly with my own. I swallowed hard, and the metallic taste of nervous anticipation filled my mouth as Alek stopped just a few feet away. The faint scent of his cologne sharp and unmistakable, a mixture of citrus and something darker, grounding me in the reality of the moment. I forced myself to focus on the floor, on the careful steps I needed to take to reach the other side of the room. Yet every nerve was alert, sensing the subtle shifts in his posture, the way he held himself like a chess master anticipating the next move. A sudden breeze from the terrace made the necklace sway slightly, catching the light and sending a small reflection across the wall. And I felt my pulse spike, a jolt of awareness that pulled me further into the silent conversation his presence demanded. Guests brushed past, oblivious to the tension threading between us, their laughter and clinking glasses a stark contrast to the tightening knot in my chest. And I realized that for the first time, I was entirely visible to someone in a way that felt impossible, almost frightening. I moved carefully, step by step, letting the weight of the tray anchor me even as my mind reeled. My gaze flicking briefly to his face to gauge his reaction, noticing the subtle rise of an eyebrow, the tightening of his jaw, the way his eyes softened imperceptibly for a fraction of a second before regaining their cold precision. Every movement mattered. Every choice felt consequential, as if the entire room had fallen away, leaving only the two of us in a space defined by glances and unspoken understanding. My breath came in shallow, careful draws, and I forced myself to count the seconds between steps, grounding myself in the rhythm of motion, while the necklace rested lightly against my chest, a reminder of unseen connections, of histories I was only beginning to understand, of the invisible thread that bound me to this man and to a moment that had the weight of something far greater than a single evening, a single choice. Alek's presence was magnetic, overwhelming, and yet not threatening in the way I had feared. It demanded attention, forced me to confront something I could not yet name, and as I navigated through the crowd, I felt the tension stretch and bend around us like a living thing, tangible and impossible to ignore. Each careful step a negotiation, a delicate dance with someone who had already altered the course of my night, and perhaps something deeper, more permanent in ways I had not yet realized. Every movement I made seemed amplified, each step echoing in the grand hall like a reminder that nothing here was ordinary, that every glance carried weight, and the silver locket resting against my chest pulsed with a history I could barely comprehend. Alek Romano's gaze followed me, unrelenting, as I moved toward a cluster of guests, my mind racing to maintain composure, to smile, to offer polite words while feeling the pull of something unseen yet undeniably present between us. The soft murmur of conversation, the delicate clink of fine china, and the rustle of silk gowns created a backdrop that felt almost surreal, a contrast to the sharp, calculating awareness of his presence, which pressed against me like a current I could neither resist nor ignore. My hands gripped the tray with a strength I did not know I possessed, each glass a precarious balancing act, my pulse aligning with the rhythm of my measured steps. Yet my mind could not escape the memory the necklace had evoked. faint recollections of stories, whispered fragments of a past life that seemed to intertwine with the man watching me, hints of promises, of loss, of connections I had never been aware of, yet now felt as if they had always existed, waiting to be recognized. I passed a table of laughing patrons, their conversations meaningless in the gravity of the moment, and felt my throat tighten as I caught the smallest flicker in Alek's eyes, a subtle narrowing that spoke volumes, commanding attention without a word, a presence that reshaped the space between us, making the air dense, charged, tangible, the scent of polished wood, faint roses from the centerpieces, and the subtle warmth of candlelight mixed with the cool, metallic touch of the locket against my palm, grounding me while simultaneously heightening the awareness of every minute detail in the room. Guests shifted in their seats, oblivious to the silent dialogue being conducted through glances, through unspoken recognition, and I felt the undeniable pull of awareness that made each motion feel monumental, each decision loaded with consequence. Alek took a step closer, deliberate, almost imperceptible, yet it altered the dynamic entirely, and I felt a shiver of realization. This was no ordinary encounter, no chance interaction, but something meticulously unfolding, a choreography of tension, recognition, and quiet authority. I tilted the tray slightly, letting the crystal glasses catch the chandelier light, just so. A calculated move to steady myself and maintain control. But every adjustment seemed observed, measured, interpreted, and I sensed the subtle shift of intention behind his gaze, the quiet weight of curiosity laced with the power of experience. My breath remained shallow, precise, as I navigated the space with care, the floors polished and cold beneath my shoes, echoing the cadence of my steps, my chest tightening with anticipation as I recognized that every subtle choice, every controlled movement, every step taken under the brilliant glow of the hall's lights, contributed to a silent unfolding understanding, a dialogue unspoken yet impossible to ignore. The necklace swayed lightly as I moved, a quiet pendulum marking the rhythm of the moment, its silver surface catching the glow of the chandeliers, and I felt a strange sense of destiny, a connection threading from the past into the present, pulling my attention and forcing a reckoning with something larger than myself. Alek's eyes remained locked on mine, unflinching, as he moved with the precision of someone who had mastered not only his surroundings but the effect he had on them. The quiet dominance of his presence wrapping the room around him, and I could feel, with every careful step, every measured breath, that the evening had shifted irreversibly, that I had crossed a threshold into space where history, memory, and awareness collided, leaving me both unsettled and acutely alive, standing on the edge of recognition, on the precipice of something extraordinary unfolding before me, and I could do nothing but continue forward, the silver necklace against my chest a tether to an invisible past and an inevitable future. The necklace weighed heavier than it should have, its silver cool against my skin, yet every movement I made amplified the sense of being observed, the subtle tension of anticipation curling around me like mist. Alek Romano had stopped a few feet away, his posture impeccable, shoulders squared, exuding a quiet intensity that seemed to bend the space between us without a single word. My hands tightened on the tray, not because of the glasses, but because of the electric awareness that everything I did, every step, every slight tilt of my head, was being absorbed, measured, catalogued. The gala continued around us, a blur of laughter, music, and conversation, yet the edges of the room seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of us suspended in a space defined by focus and recognition. I could feel the floor beneath my shoes, polished marble that reflected light like water, grounding me, yet the pull of his gaze made each step feel precarious, a delicate balance between composure and the undercurrent of emotion that seemed to pulse through the air. My mind flickered with fragmented recollections, whispers of stories I had heard long ago about the woman who had owned the necklace, her life intertwined with secrets, promises, and quiet tragedies. And I realized that this was not merely a chance encounter. It was the unfolding of something larger, something that had been waiting for this moment to reveal itself. Alek's eyes softened just slightly, imperceptibly, a fraction of humanity slipping through the controlled exterior, and it sent a ripple through me that made my heart stutter, reminding me that beneath the authority, the precision, there was a depth of feeling, carefully contained, yet impossible to completely mask. The tray felt heavier with the weight of realization, the glasses wobbling imperceptibly as I adjusted my grip, and I moved toward the opposite side of the room. Each step calculated, measured as if rehearsed in slow motion, aware of the subtle shifts in his posture, the faint flare of expression that hinted at comprehension, curiosity, and perhaps the first stirrings of recognition of the invisible thread linking past to present, the soft hum of conversation, the delicate notes of the string quartet, and the gentle clinking of silverware contrasted sharply with the intensity radiating from him, making the room feel both enormous and impossibly small at once. I breathed carefully in shallow, deliberate measures, anchoring myself to the rhythm of movement, yet I could not ignore the sense that time had stretched and slowed, each second laden with significance, each breath a negotiation with awareness, attention, and unspoken understanding. A subtle breeze from the terrace made the Locket shift slightly, catching the chandelier light, sending a small reflection dancing across the floor, and I felt it as a pulse, a rhythm marking the invisible connection, a gentle reminder that everything here was consequential, that the past had threaded itself into this precise moment. Alek shifted his weight, the faintest exhale betraying the calculation behind his calm exterior, and I sensed instinctively that this encounter was already reshaping the course of the evening, the trajectory of our understanding, and perhaps something deeper, something that extended beyond the gala, beyond the room, beyond the glimmering chandeliers, and into the intangible space between recognition, memory, and awareness. Every subtle glance, every careful step, every controlled motion of my hands, every measured adjustment of the tray contributed to a silent dialogue, unspoken yet unmistakably profound, binding us in a moment suspended between uncertainty and revelation. And I knew that as I moved through the room, guided by the interplay of tension, and the metallic whisper of the necklace against my chest, the unfolding of this evening was irrevocably changed, charting a path I could neither predict nor resist, yet could not help but follow, each heartbeat aligned with the unspoken pulse of connection that marked the beginning of a story only just starting to reveal itself. The room felt impossibly still, though the gala carried on around us, a river of movement and sound that seemed distant, filtered through the intensity of his gaze. Every eye on me felt as though it were being refracted through Alek Romano's presence, yet none truly mattered except his. I moved slowly, deliberately, letting the tray slide along my fingertips as though it were part of the rhythm of the evening. But my attention was split, pulled between the careful navigation of the crowd and the magnetic, unyielding focus of his eyes. The silver locket against my chest seemed to vibrate faintly with the weight of its history, and I could not shake the sensation that every breath I took, every small adjustment of my shoulders or hands, was being silently assessed, measured, catalogued. I felt a subtle warmth brush against my skin from the overhead lights. Yet it was nothing compared to the awareness that radiated from him, an aura of presence so compelling that I could almost sense the exact angle of his body, the calculated motion of each step he considered taking. My mind raced, parsing fragments of stories I had heard long ago about the woman who had once owned the necklace. Whispers of legacy, of promises, of a life intersecting with his in ways I was only beginning to perceive, and a shiver ran down my spine at the implications, the invisible threads pulling me toward a realization I could not yet name. I tilted the tray slightly, allowing the light to catch the edges of the glasses in a way that distracted my awareness from shaking hands, grounding me in the physical, the concrete motions required to continue moving. Yet I could not suppress the sense of being observed, the electric tension that threaded the air between us, binding the past to this present moment. Alek moved subtly, shifting his weight, a measured step forward that did not break the flow of the evening but subtly altered the invisible dynamic of proximity, and I felt it like a nudge against my chest, a silent insistence that my attention, my awareness, could not wander, that the room, the crowd, the chandeliers, the music had all become a backdrop to a silent, unfolding understanding between us. The floor beneath my shoes, polished to a mirror-like finish, reflected the warm light in fractals that caught my eye, yet every reflection seemed to pull me back to the focal point of the evening. His presence, his gaze, the quiet command embedded in his posture. Each careful step was a negotiation, a conscious act of maintaining composure while my mind cataloged every micro-expression, every subtle change in his stance, reading intentions, deciphering meaning from nuance. The Locket shifted slightly as I adjusted the tray, the light catching it, casting a small glimmer that felt like a pulse, marking the cadence of the silent dialogue threading between us. Guests brushed past, oblivious to the delicate interplay, their laughter, their gestures, meaningless against the gravity of awareness, and I felt the tether of history, memory, and recognition tightening. A gentle pull that reminded me that this was no ordinary evening, no chance interaction, but the careful, deliberate unfolding of something extraordinary. I counted each measured breath, each footfall across the marble, aligning myself with the rhythm of anticipation, aware that every choice, every careful motion, every glance taken or avoided contributed to a growing awareness, a silent acknowledgement of connection, legacy, and unfolding understanding. And I realized that the evening, the gala, the glittering lights, and the movement of the crowd had become secondary to the silent, profound exchange anchored by the silver necklace and the presence of the man who had observed it, understood it, and whose awareness now guided the subtle choreography of the night, marking a shift in perception, a change in trajectory, and a gravity that I could not resist, compelling me to continue, step by deliberate step, into the unfolding moment. The gentle hum of conversation and the distant clink of crystal glasses seemed to blur into a soft, ambient rhythm as I moved across the grand hall, every step guided by the weight of awareness pressing against me. Alek Romano remained close enough that I could sense the subtle shift of air around him, the faint scent of his cologne weaving through the space, grounding me even as my mind raced to interpret the implications of the necklace resting against my chest. Each careful motion of my hands, every tilt of the tray, became a silent negotiation with the presence of someone who seemed simultaneously a stranger and a mirror to history I had never known. The silver chain glinted faintly under the chandeliers, catching the light in a way that drew his gaze again, unwavering, and I felt the pull of recognition threading through the space between us, a tether binding the past, present, and an unseen future. I moved toward a quieter corner of the room, weaving carefully between clusters of guests, the polished marble floor beneath my shoes, reflecting the warm, golden glow of the lights above, each reflection fracturing the space into fragments that reminded me of the complexity of this moment, the layers of significance hidden behind simple appearances. My chest tightened, breaths shallow and deliberate, as I tried to maintain composure, balancing the tray and the weight of attention simultaneously, feeling the unspoken gravity in the way Alek's eyes followed me, tracking, assessing, absorbing every nuance. The gentle strains of the string quartet seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat, each note a quiet echo of anticipation, each rise and fall a reminder of the tenuous control threading through the evening. I felt a subtle warmth at the back of my neck, a faint tension curling around my shoulders, yet the focus remained on him, the quiet assertion of presence that radiated authority without a single word, a silent command that drew me forward even as I fought to maintain an ordinary facade. Memories whispered at the edges of my mind, fragments of a story connected to the necklace, a history of promises, loss, and unacknowledged connections, surfacing now with a clarity that was both startling and grounding, compelling me to reconcile the unknown with the tangible reality before me. I tilted the tray gently, letting the glasses catch the chandelier light, grounding myself in the physical while my awareness stretched to the subtle shifts in his expression, the faint flare of a brow, the micro-tension in his shoulders, the way his posture seemed to anchor the space around him. The room's chatter became a distant backdrop, the movement of servers and guests a blur, as the quiet dialogue of glances and recognition unfolded between us, unspoken yet palpable, a rhythm dictated by history, observation, and the silent gravity of a presence that commanded attention effortlessly. Each step I took was measured, deliberate, aligning with the pulse of the moment, aware that the necklace was no longer simply an accessory but a key, a silent marker of connection and memory, drawing us into an invisible conversation that seemed to stretch beyond the confines of the gala, beyond the light, beyond the music. Alek shifted slightly, imperceptibly, the motion carrying weight, a silent signal of engagement, recognition, and the meticulous observation of someone attuned to nuance and meaning. a reminder that this encounter was unfolding with careful precision. Every movement deliberate, every glance charged with significance. And I felt both the thrill and the weight of being at the center of something larger, something quietly extraordinary, a tethered convergence of awareness, memory, and unspoken understanding that demanded attention and presence, guiding each deliberate step, each measured breath, toward the unfolding revelation, in a space defined not by walls or light, but by the silent gravity between us. The weight of the moment pressed against me, subtle yet unyielding, as I continued navigating the marble floors, the tray in my hands steady despite the tremor that ran through my arms. Alek Romano had not spoken, but his presence communicated more than words ever could. The measured precision of his steps and the unwavering intensity of his gaze, creating an invisible thread that linked us across the room. The chandeliers above fractured the light into golden prisms that danced across his suit, reflecting in the silver of the locket and catching my attention in small, hypnotic glimmers. Each movement I made, each careful step between guests felt amplified, the air around me charged with unspoken tension and the quiet resonance of recognition that neither of us could deny. My mind spun with recollections, fragments of stories long told about the woman who had owned the necklace, whispers of her presence, her choices, her legacy, now intersecting with this evening in ways that were both startling and grounding. I felt the pulse of awareness in his eyes, subtle shifts in posture, micro-expressions that spoke volumes without breaking the stillness of the room, and I realized that the necklace had become more than an accessory. It was a conduit, a bridge between past and present, tying me to an understanding I had not yet fully grasped. Guests moved around us in oblivious harmony, their laughter and clinking glasses a muted backdrop. Yet the air between Alek and me felt tangible, heavy, with significance, each silent glance loaded with layers of meaning that my heart struggled to process. The polished marble beneath my shoes reflected the golden glow, creating a subtle rhythm that aligned with my deliberate, measured steps, grounding me even as the weight of anticipation pressed against my chest. And I could feel the quiet negotiation of attention, awareness, and subtle control threading through every motion. A faint breeze from an open terrace brushed the back of my neck, teasing the locket against my skin, a gentle reminder of the gravity it carried. And I realized that the evening, the gala, and the shifting light had all converged to form a stage for this unspoken exchange, one where history, memory, and presence intertwined seamlessly. My breath came in careful, shallow draws as I continued to move, each gesture calculated yet natural, balancing the tangible task of carrying the tray with the intangible awareness of the silent dialogue unfolding with every micro-expression, every tilt of the head, every flicker of recognition in his eyes. The silver chain shifted lightly against my chest, a pendulum marking the cadence of the silent connection, and I felt a deep, unnameable awareness that this moment had already begun to change the trajectory of the evening, embedding a tension that was precise, deliberate, and entirely inescapable. Alek shifted his weight, a subtle motion that carried the gravity of engagement, and I understood instinctively that every careful step I took, every measured motion, and every glance cast or avoided contributed to a growing acknowledgement between us, a quiet, profound understanding threaded with history and anticipation. The room's ambient noise, the soft strains of the quartet, the gentle murmur of conversation, all receded into near silence in the space defined by this awareness, leaving only the weight of recognition, the pull of history, and the tether of connection that bound me to him, to the locket, and to the invisible path that stretched forward into the unknown, compelling me to move deliberately, breath by careful breath, into the unfolding reality of this extraordinary moment. The tension between us seemed to reach a quiet crescendo as I carefully stepped toward the far side of the room, each motion deliberate, measured, my hands steady despite the pulse of adrenaline that danced in my veins. Alek Romano did not speak, yet every subtle shift of his posture, every small adjustment of his stance, communicated volumes that word could never capture, and I felt an invisible gravity pulling me toward an understanding I had not yet fully articulated. The chandeliers above fractured the warm light into golden prisms that shimmered across the polished marble floor, reflecting against his tailored suit and the delicate silver of the locket resting against my chest. creating a visual rhythm that mirrored the silent cadence of our awareness. Guests moved around us, oblivious to the electric current threading between us, their laughter and conversations blending into an ambient hum. Yet the room seemed to contract in my perception, as if every element existed solely to highlight the magnetic focus between us. My mind flickered with fragments of stories long told, whispered accounts of the necklace's history, the legacy of the woman who had once possessed it, the quiet echoes of promises and memory. And I realized with a shiver that this evening had become a stage for something far larger than the gala itself, an intersection of history, awareness, and recognition that I could neither anticipate nor resist. I shifted the tray slightly, allowing the light to catch the glasses in a gentle sparkle, anchoring myself in the tangible while remaining acutely aware of his presence, noting the subtle tension in his jaw, the faint flare of his brow, the quiet precision of his gaze, which seemed to measure not just my movements but the entirety of the room through the prism of attention focused on me. The necklace swayed softly with each step, a silent metronome marking the rhythm of this delicate, unspoken dialogue, and I felt the gravity of connection, the weight of unacknowledged history threading its way into the present, tying me and Alek together across memory, recognition, and understanding. Each breath I drew was shallow and deliberate, aligning with the rhythm of my cautious steps, each one a negotiation between maintaining composure and acknowledging the significance of the moment, aware that the simple act of moving through the room had become a choreography of attention, observation, and subtle revelation. Alek shifted imperceptibly, a fraction of motion that carried the weight of engagement and focus, and I understood instinctively that the dynamics between us had altered irreversibly, that each careful gesture, each micro-expression, and every controlled movement contributed to a growing acknowledgement, a silent, profound recognition of the invisible threads that connected past, present, and the possibilities unfolding in the seconds ahead. The music of the quartet, once a lively accompaniment, became a gentle undertone, blending with the low murmur of conversations into a background that emphasized the intensity of awareness threading the space between us, and I felt the full gravity of being seen, understood, and acknowledged in a way that transcended the ordinary, compelling me to continue moving with deliberate care, each step a conscious act of navigation through a moment charged with history, significance, and unspoken understanding, tethered irrevocably to the presence of Alek and the quiet, profound story held within the silver locket against my chest. The final moments of the evening seemed suspended in a fragile equilibrium, as if the chandeliers themselves held their breath, reflecting the golden light across the polished marble floors and casting gentle glimmers against Alek Romano's sharp, poised features. I moved with deliberate care, each step a conscious measure, the tray steady in my hands, though my heart raced with the awareness of the silent gravity threading the space between us. Guests continued their conversations, oblivious to the quiet intensity unfolding near the center of the room, their laughter and the soft notes of the string quartet forming a muted backdrop to the electric, unspoken dialogue that had been building since the moment I first entered. The silver necklace rested lightly against my chest, catching the light in a way that seemed to pulse with memory, with legacy, with a story unfolding silently between two people, whose lives had intersected in ways neither could yet fully articulate. Alek's eyes never wavered from mine, a constant piercing presence that seemed to measure, to catalog, to comprehend every subtle motion, every micro-expression, every tentative breath. I felt the weight of understanding pressing quietly against my awareness, the gentle pull of recognition threading through the air like an invisible tether, connecting past, present, and a future I had not yet imagined. Each breath I took was measured, shallow and deliberate, each step a negotiation between maintaining composure and acknowledging the profound significance of the moment, aware that every gesture, every tilt of the tray, every flicker of attention contributed to a growing, silent understanding. The locket swayed with the rhythm of my motion, a subtle pendulum marking the cadence of the connection, and I felt an almost tangible sense of history resonating through it. A reminder that every decision, every careful movement, carried weight far beyond the room, beyond the gala, beyond the brilliance of the chandeliers. Alek shifted imperceptibly, the smallest movement yet one loaded with intent, And I recognized instinctively that this was a silent acknowledgement, a measured response to the subtle cues of awareness and recognition that had been building between us. The polished floors reflected fragmented light across his suit, casting patterns that seemed almost choreographed, mirroring the delicate balance of attention, perception, and unspoken connection that defined our interaction. I could feel the invisible thread taut between us, linking observation, comprehension, and the quiet gravity of legacy embedded in the necklace against my chest, and I understood that the evening had transformed, that the moment had been irrevocably altered, creating a space where awareness, recognition, and silent understanding dominated over the surrounding activity. My pulse aligned with the rhythm of careful steps and deliberate gestures, the ambient sound of the Gala receding to a soft undercurrent, and I felt the subtle, profound impact of being seen, truly seen, in a way that demanded presence, demanded attention, and commanded an acknowledgement beyond words. Every measured motion, every deliberate breath, every fleeting glance contributed to a silent narrative, one of legacy, recognition, and connection, threading together the past and the present into a delicate but undeniable tapestry that enveloped the room. I realized with a clarity both exhilarating and grounding that the story had shifted irreversibly, that the presence of Alek Romano, the weight of the necklace, and the silent, potent exchange between us had created a moment of understanding and anticipation that would define the evening, leaving me standing at the threshold of something extraordinary, tethered irrevocably to awareness, history, and the invisible path stretching forward.